Hey guys, welcome back for part two. I want to start by saying that I was completely, I, I don't know the word. I was a little bit speechless yesterday, overwhelmed at the response that I received back from the video from yesterday from people who were just grateful that I was able to open up like that. People who were thankful to hear another side of it. So for those of you that reached out to me after yesterday, thank you so much, because I was an emotional basket case all day yesterday, and even this morning talking to Michael about it. It's hard to talk about, and so just to be able to like breathe and open up to people and know that that I might be able to help somebody through a deployment or through this phase of military life it's really powerful for me. So I am willing to make myself uncomfortable to help somebody else. So thank you if you reached out to me yesterday. But I'm going to carry on today. So if you're getting on, just let me know that you're here. Either put a comment or put some kind of like, or have that pretty little flower or a heart down there so that I know that people are getting on. And I'm going to roll into part two. So yesterday I started talking about the pre-deployment stage, sort of the workup stage, and how it really can affect the family, the spouse, and the kids, as well as the military member. But because I've never been on that side of it, I'm really just trying not to hit much on that because I don't know what it's like for them. Maria, it's fine if you missed yesterday. The blog is posted on my page, so you can always go back and read that if you don't want to sit through the video. So I guess one of the questions that I got from yesterday was, how much notice do you get when they're getting ready to deploy? And the answer to that really varies depending on the deployment. We have had months notice where we had lots of workup time, and then there was the time that I was 6 months pregnant and Michael walked into my job and said he was leaving in 2 weeks. So it really just depends on the actual assignment that they're given and the deployment that they're going on, how much time they get, like how much notice they get. And so that answer really varies. There's not really a solid answer in that, but I would say that most of the time, and I don't really know here, but most of the time, I think you get somewhat of a decent notice. And we've been told it will be short. Hold on, it's scrolling up here. I'm interested. We may have a deployment. It really just depends, Maria. We've had like months where we knew way in advance, and like I said, we've had 2 weeks. So it really just depends on the unit and how they do it. So just communication is huge between you and your spouse and their unit. So it can really, really vary. I can't really give you a solid answer on that. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is the first month after they leave, month 1. So yesterday I talked all the way up until the buses pulled out from the unit and kind of what that was like emotionally, mentally, physically. It's just exhausting. And so just kind of picking up from there, as soon as those buses pull away, while you feel like your heart just like ripped out of your chest and is driving away as well, there's also this overwhelming feeling of relief, which sounds terrible unless you're in that situation. It's almost like, and I can compare this because I've been there, when you are living with somebody who is in hospice care, when you're living with somebody who's in hospice and they're fighting for their life, and you're with them all day and all night, and the ups and the downs of watching somebody suffer through cancer or a terminal illness. It's so emotionally exhausting. And so I feel like a deployment is similar to living with somebody who's terminally ill, because when they finally take that last breath, you're crazy sad and you're overwhelmed with grief, and at the same time there's this really odd sense of relief that now we can move forward. And it sounds cruel when you've never been in that position, and I guess either one, like hospice care or deployment. And I hate to use those two hand in hand, but it sounds really cruel when you've never been through it. Sounds like, God, what a heartless bee. Like, but the truth is, once they actually pull away and you can let that emotion flow and you get the sadness out, and then you look down and there's little people that are watching you and they're like, what do we do now? You know, they don't say that, but it's written all over their face. Like, now what do we do? You know? And you're like, for me, I was like, all right, let's go to Chuck E. Cheese. Like, let's go to Chuck E. Cheese. Just wipe the tears off and step it to Chuck E. Cheese. Let's go have a good time. Because the reality is, your life has to continue for the next 6 to 9 months to 12 months, however long the deployment's going to be for. Your life has to continue on. And you have people in your house who are depending on that normalcy. They're depending on you to continue with their life. You know, your life and their life, it doesn't stop just because your spouse leaves. So there's this huge, overwhelming mix of emotions that come when those buses pull away and when they get to that point where you can't see them anymore. It's exhausting. You just feel this like, oh, just tired. Like, as much as I want to go lay in the bed and go to sleep finally, I have people depending on me. And so you move forward. And I would say the first month, it's very overwhelming. You're trying to figure out how your schedule is going to work. You know, depending on the age of your kids, you may have to shuffle multiple children, going to multiple places for various activities. Those are things you have to work out. And so you have to depend on your neighbors, your friends. If you're lucky enough, you have family in the area, or you're able to go home and be with family. It's really different for everybody, but this is where it becomes so imperative that you don't sit home wallowing in your own sadness and your own struggle. This is where you reach out to the key volunteers. You reach out to the unit. You get involved in the wives' activities. You meet other people, because you know what? Everyone's going through the same crap hole right now. Everybody is experiencing the same thing. Everybody's washer just broke that day. The dryer, it's probably going to stop working. The dishwasher is going to bust. You're going to get a flat tire. The battery is not going to start. The AC is going to go out. Something is going to go wrong in the first couple of months of a deployment. It's just the way the universe likes to slap you in the face. And it's how you deal with that. So are you going to have a complete meltdown because the dishwasher's not working? Well, yeah, probably. And you know what? It's okay. But then you need to suck it up and you need to call whoever you need to call to get it fixed. So it's just overwhelming. Like, realizing for myself, I feel like so often I do everything. I do almost everything with the kids. Almost everything with the house falls in my responsibility. All the shopping, the cooking, the cleaning, all of those things fall into my lap. And sometimes we don't realize how much our spouse actually does until they aren't there to do it anymore. Suddenly, we have to take out the trash. We have to pull the trash cans to the driveway. We have to pull them back. We have to load and empty the dishwasher every single day. We're the sole responsibility of laundry. There's nobody there to help us. It sounds like minor things until you're doing it alone for 6 months, 9 months, a year. Then it's not such a minor thing. Then it's a huge thing. And these little things that really in the grand scheme of life aren't really that big of a deal, they just become much greater. They feel so huge. They feel like you're being punished by the universe. Like, isn't it enough that my spouse is gone now? Now the dishwasher is going to leak? Really? Like, I can't handle it. I can't handle this. And everyone's going to have those moments, and that's okay to have those moments. It's more important what you do after you have that moment and picking yourself up and carrying on. I think the other emotion that's very real in the first month is feeling like you're all alone. It's quiet. It's quiet when the kids go to bed. It's quiet when everyone is at school. Listen. That's quiet. And it gets old and scary and lonely and sad when you're doing that every single night. You put the kids to bed and you're there alone by yourself, which is great the first couple nights. The first couple nights you're like, you know what, I get to watch whatever I want to watch on TV. this is not that bad. I don't have to watch ESPN tonight. But it gets lonely, and you want to tell somebody all about what happened during the day. You want to tell somebody all the great, cute, adorable things that your kids did during the day or your dog did during the day, and you don't have anyone to tell. So you start to feel sort of separated from your friends whose husbands are home. And maybe there's a little bit of resentment there when you look outside and they're hanging outside and you're like, oh, I don't want to go outside because then I have to watch these kids. I don't have anyone to help me. And I also have to cook dinner. So I guess they're going to have to play inside so I can go cook dinner. And there's just this feeling of being alone. And again, I encourage you to reach out to your friends whose husbands are also deployed, because guess what? They don't want to cook either. So order a pizza together, or cook dinner together, go out to eat, find something to do together. One of the worst things that I do when Michael is deployed is I fall out of my normal sleep pattern. And almost everyone that I talk to that's been through deployment, or husbands that have been TDY for an extended period of time, fall into the same habit where you stay up late. You just stay up late, and then you sleep in later during the day, or you take a nap, and your whole sleep schedule gets off. It's hard to sleep. You don't sleep fully because you're waiting for that phone call. You're waiting for that email. You're waiting for just the slightest bit of contact. In the first month, it can take them quite a while to get to where their final destination is. It can take them quite a while to get settled. So you're waiting for them to get to Kuwait so that they can call you and let you know that they're okay. Because until you get that phone call, all the what ifs, they're ticking. All those what ifs, what if, they're all ticking. And you start realizing that if he never comes home, this is my life. This is it. Like this is what I'm left with. And so you're waiting for that first contact. And when that first phone call comes through, oh man, just to hear the sound of their voice, it's so powerful to hear their voice. And God, they sound exhausted. They've been traveling, usually in an uncomfortable plane, helicopter. They've got all their gear with them. They probably haven't eaten the way they want to eat, or they have. It's getting better. I feel like the more time we're over there. Lack of sleep. They're uncomfortable. So when you hear their voice and you're like, oh my gosh, babe, how are you? I've been waiting to hear from you. And they're like, I'm doing good. It breaks your heart. It breaks your heart because in my mind, when Michael deployed, I had in my mind that he was like playing soccer with these kids on the streets of Iraq. I had in my mind that he was like handing things out to these women and doing all these service projects. That's not at all what the reality was. And I'll get into more of the actual reality of what he was doing tomorrow. But it's just that first phone call after they leave is so important. That first email is so important. It's that confirmation that they made it there okay. And for myself, that was like the first step. Like, I need you to get there okay. If you get there okay, we can take the next step. But I just need you to get there okay. And for those of us who are here, we have no idea. We have no idea what they're flying into. And our very first deployment was when all of that mess sort of first started. And so nobody really knew. Nobody really knew what to expect. You know, we didn't really know what our husbands were flying into. And at the time he was with recon, he was with the reconnaissance unit. And so that in and of itself adds a whole nother layer to a deployment. So it was just all the unknowns and all the uncertainties. And, I touched a little bit yesterday talking about how right before he left, we found out my dad was terminal. So at the same time as I'm like up all night waiting for these phone calls, you don't want to miss that phone call. That is literally the worst feeling when you look at your phone and see there's been a missed call and it's like that weird funky number that comes up, you're like, no. You don't go anywhere without your phone. You don't take a shower without your phone. You don't go to the bathroom without your phone. You sure as heck have that phone on loud as loud as it can go, with you, on you, available to you at all times. God forbid you leave the phone anywhere, you're literally having a panic attack. You need that phone in your hand because you just don't know when they're going to call. You don't know how long it's going to be between phone calls. You don't know what the reception is going to be like. So you just get as much in as you can, as quickly as you can, and then all the other stuff as you have time. But at the same time, I was waiting for these phone calls from Michael to let me know that he's there okay and everything is okay and they're getting settled. I'm also getting phone calls from my mom with updates and things on my dad. And our first deployment, that's when I decided to go home. I figured, it's weird to say because of all the tragic things that happened during that deployment. So it's weird and maybe a little bit selfish of me to say that I feel like him leaving for those particular 6 months was almost a blessing for me, because I was able to go home and be with my parents and help my mom and reconstruct a relationship with my dad and be able to have conversations with my dad that were time consuming and so overdue and so incredibly important. And I would never have been able to have that time if he were here. And so him leaving, like I said, I feel gross to even say it because it was such a terrible deployment for us to say that it was almost a blessing. But it was, because I was able to pack up and move home. And Christian was young enough that he didn't have school or anything. And so I was able to go for those 6 months and be able to spend that time with my dad. And that is kind of how I knew, or I felt in my heart, that Michael was always going to come home. And I said this on the video yesterday. I did not believe for 1 second that God was going to take my dad and my husband at the same time. Not for 1 second did I think that was going to happen. In the same breath, I will tell you, there were moments that were scary as shit for us. There's not even anything to really say about it. I mean, I'm going to really go more into that tomorrow, but there are things that happened on these deployments where I don't know how or why or how Michael walked away and other people didn't. It doesn't make sense, other than it's just the plan that we don't have to understand. We just have to live it and we have to accept it. And I'm so grateful for it, because I do still have my whole family intact. I have my husband, we have our kids. You know, my dad is not here, but that would have happened regardless of deployment or no deployment. So it's that first month is tough. Yeah, Ben. No, we don't. We're okay. We have to leave at 5. No, you have time. You're okay. He's got soccer tryouts tonight. So, yeah, the first month is tough. It's overwhelming. It's such a mix of emotions. It's like this weird relief with this high stress and this overwhelming, just overwhelmed. And yet you sort of fall into your routine in the first month, and your kids fall into routine, and everything goes from this like super high stress level of getting them ready to go and packing them, and the emotion, like you try not to cry and then you fall apart, and you pull yourself back together and you fall apart, and so your emotions are all over the place, and it's just exhausting. So you finally get to say goodbye to them, and you have that meltdown. And then you got to put your big girl panties on, and you just got to deal with shit. You just have to move forward, and you deal with the obstacles that come your way in the first month, and you try to have a good support system. It's huge. You have to have a support system. You cannot do a deployment by yourself. You will literally be the most miserable person on the face of this planet. You have to reach out to people. That's it. That's really all there is to it. So thank you guys so much for joining me today to hear about month 1. Tomorrow, my live video will be about the bulk of the deployment, the middle of the deployment, kind of after you've come into your routine, they're in their routine, and I'm going to touch a little bit on some of the really terrible things that we experienced through our deployments. And I will just reiterate for those that weren't on here yesterday, not a psychologist, not a counselor, not a military expert. I'm just a military wife that's been through multiple deployments. And I just want to share this information with people, so if anyone can learn what to expect going through a deployment, learn the normalcies, and to understand that whatever you're feeling is appropriate. You're angry, that's appropriate. It's okay to be angry at your spouse. It's okay for them to leave and you go home and be like, you know what, damn it, he didn't change that light bulb I asked him to change before he left. Now I have to get up on a chair and change it. And to be angry, that's okay. Whatever you're feeling, it's your feeling, and you're allowed to have that, and nobody can tell you it's not okay to feel a certain way. It's all normal, so just don't go through it by yourself. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll post my blog later about this topic if you guys want to go back and check it out. The post from yesterday is already posted on my page if you want to go back and check that out. That was a pretty emotionally tasking thing to write. So anyways, I love the love. You guys have a great day. It's beautiful. Go outside.